Hi, and welcome to Check Your Thread, a podcast about sewing more sustainably. My name's Zoe, and I'm obsessed with sewing. I've been blogging about it for over 13 years and am the creator and host of the popular handmade wardrobe challenge, Me Made May. But like many people, I've become increasingly concerned about the climate crisis and the way my lifestyle contributes to it. So in this podcast, I'll be nerding out about making clothes whilst exploring how to minimise the negative impact that it may have. I really hope you'll join me on this journey. Hello, Check Your Threaders! Are you doing well? I very much hope so. I'm happy to report that we had a great response to last week's episode with return guest Shams Eldin Rogers. Thanks for the messages and the feedback, everyone. Shams was talking about the various reasons for giving reusable period products a try and reducing our reliance on disposables that we have to spend money on every month. We also spoke about relationships and expectations when your craft and art exist within the domestic sphere. And Shams told us her thoughtful and intelligent approach to making and wearing clothes from a different culture. It was so good. I keep thinking about Shams' words on these topics. If you haven't already, make sure you go and have a listen. It's episode number 49. And please remember, if you've enjoyed an episode, you can help others discover it by leaving a rating and a quick review on your podcast app or sharing the episode with a friend or on social media. A lovely listener and patron named Pat made a fantastic point in response to the first part of the episode. Pat highlighted that pretty much everything we were talking about regarding disposable and reusable period wear is applicable to products for bladder leakage problems as well. This is something that should definitely be explored, and I'm planning to come back to this in future episodes. Thanks for that, Pat. So, if anyone has any questions to pose for me for the first birthday episode coming up, please get them in quick. The response to my request before has been a little bit disappointing so far, so it's going to be a super boring episode without more questions. I'm going to be recording the episode on the 21st of July, so please send me something, anything, by emailing zoe@checkyourthread.com. Please put first birthday episode in the subject line so I'll know not to open it up before the recording session. Thank you. So, I hope any making endeavours you're currently engaged with are going well. Despite having another super busy week, I've been metaphorically on fire lately. I finished up my Leha dressing gown robe thing, then I made myself the sun hat that I've had cut out for months, and now I've almost finished a pair of summer shorts for my son as well. Time is running out for me to get the hot weather items finished that my family needs before our trip to Italy at the end of the month, so I'm not taking my foot off the pedal yet. Sustainability-wise, it's Plastic Free July, so I'd like to encourage you to visit plasticfreejuly.org. I'm sure if you're a listener of this podcast, you're already switched on to plastic waste and many of its harmful effects. I also imagine you're already doing what you can to avoid unnecessary plastic, including packaging where possible, but on the off chance that there's some ideas that are new to you, please do visit that website. But sharing about the campaign and the website is also a useful way to attempt to engage those who aren't picking up plastic-free options where they can. But my real hope for this month is that additional pressure gets put on brands and supermarkets to reduce the amount of plastic packaging on products. Because it's so bloody hard to avoid it, even when you go out your way as far as your lifestyle and means allow you to. Anyway, also relating to sustainability, I'd like to report back on the second-hand school uniform sale that I organised for my kids' school summer fair. Well, the amount of donations we received was pretty staggering, considering it's a really small school. It just goes to show how much unused clothing is floating around people's homes. The sale itself was pretty successful. We sold a lot of school jumpers and cardigans that have the school logo on them. Unsurprisingly, these are the most popular items because they're the ones that are the most expensive for families to buy, and we were selling them for £1 each. But we also sold some school summer dresses, trousers, skirts, pinafores, shorts, PE kit, polo shirts and shoes. In total, we raised about £40 for the school. But there's still so many items that were unsold, so I think I'll volunteer to organise another stall like that at the Christmas fair if they have one. I'm really hoping that people who bought items this time will come back again for the next size up next time. And also I'm hoping that others who saw the stall but never really considered second-hand school clothes before might consider it going forwards. I'd like to say a big thank you this week to Debbie and Judith. Thank you so much for signing up to become patrons of the podcast via Patreon. If you feel you're in a position to support what I'm doing here with the podcast, please find the link to our Patreon in the show notes or on the website checkyourthread.com. Okay, I've chatted enough. Let's get stuck into the meat and potatoes of today's episode. A couple of weeks ago, I got to visit an event called the Future Fabrics Expo in London. The whole thing was about innovations in textile production that are more sustainable than regular fabric production. It was super interesting and I learned a lot. And I thought that you might want to hear about it also. So I've basically written a report and turned it into an episode. It includes some of the most exciting developments that I saw, read and heard about, the sighting of my sustainability podcast Girl Crush, plus, based on my experiences there, my predictions and hopes for dressmaking fabrics in the future. I need to flag up one correction. The MA programme being run by Central St Martin's is called Regenerative Design, not Regenerative Fashion as I misnamed it in the episode. Show notes, as always, are on the website checkyourthread.com, and this week they are a bonanza of links and pics that illustrate some of the stuff I talk about in the episode, so please do go and check those out. Okay, enjoy! This week I got to go to the Future Fabrics Expo in London. It's organised by the Sustainable Angle, a non-profit organisation which aims to initiate and support projects with a focus on sustainability in fashion and textiles. This expo is the primary project of this organisation. It was basically a fabric trade show with lots of textile companies displaying samples of the fabrics, textiles and some haberdashery that they produce. Each company had a little booth for visitors to check out where they could make contacts and potentially place orders. All the products there could claim to be more sustainable in some way, either through the raw materials that they're made from, the manufacture and or finishing methods, or their degradability, and very often a combination of the above. There was also an area in the centre of the expo with a really interesting display highlighting a lot of super innovative projects. Some are already available to some degree, but many of them are still very much in the R&D phase, and are most likely years away from being brought to market. There was also a hall that allowed designers and buyers to compare the products of different textile companies within the same categories. For example, all the denim samples were hung together and all the wadding samples were next to each other and so on. And lastly, there was a small theatre area where visitors could listen in to some panel conversations on various topics, including harvesting agricultural waste and building a pathway to circular textile systems. So why was I there? I went along with Josie, owner of Fabric Godmother, the online fabric shop that I work for part-time, and Phoebe, who is the assistant buyer. My role at Fabric Godmother is mainly ordering sewing patterns and haberdashery, but more recently I've been given the role of sustainability coordinator. That means that I'm helping find ways for the company to be more sustainable and to communicate with customers on topics relating to sustainability. Josie and Phoebe were there predominantly making contacts with interesting fabric suppliers for the business, and I was there getting a vibe for the whole thing and hoovering up some interesting information about the future stuff. So what did I discover? Well, it was very interesting to see how many options of more sustainable fabrics are already on the market. Products that, as home sewers, we might have vaguely heard of or have very limited access to, or that currently have a prohibitively high price point. For example, there are textiles available from a number of companies, including Banana Tex, that are made from the abaca banana plant, which is cultivated in the Philippines. The plant requires no pesticides, fertilizer or additional water, and is contributing to the reforestation of areas that have previously been eroded due to palm oil production. Piña Tex is a company doing something similar with pineapple plants, also grown in the Philippines, which results in a product that resembles leather. And an Italian company called Orange Fibre are working with Tencel producers Lyocell to make fabrics that blend citrus byproducts and wood pulp. These interesting textiles and many more are out there and available. The problem for us and for small designers is that most of the minimums for ordering are so high that they're still really only accessible at this time to clothing brands who work in large quantities. But let's talk about what I saw in the Research and Development Super Innovative display. There were a number of projects with garment fabric applications in the works that really caught my eye. So, for example, New York-based company Ecovative is using mycelium, which is a root-like structure of fungus that usually lives underground, to grow materials with a number of exciting uses. It can be used to replace polystyrene in packaging, for example, plus it can be used to make a natural plastic-free alternative to leather. Using this substance could have heaps of environmental benefits, not least thanks to its biodegradability. I think mycelium is just incredibly cool anyway, so I'm excited that its awesomeness may have a fashion application. A company named Fulgar has developed a post-consumer waste yarn called Q-Cycle. This is made from old tyres. So tyres and other waste that cannot be recycled using mechanical methods are broken down chemically into their component forms, which display the same properties as virgin fossil fuels. These can then be used to produce a range of fabrics suitable for sports and activewear. It gives me some pause because I couldn't find any blurb on their website that mentioned if this was a closed-loop system that reuses those chemicals, or how those chemicals are otherwise disposed of. But the reuse of worn tyres that otherwise might be discarded is an interesting idea. Another project that looked really intriguing is by someone called Dr. Jess Redgrave, and it looks at the various applications of sunflowers for the fashion industry. So sunflowers can be grown as part of a regenerative farming system because they can be grown in various climates, can boost soil health and therefore improve biodiversity. Plus, sunflowers are drought resistant and can be grown without pesticides. Their potential applications for fashion include as an alternative cellulose fibre, in the production of water-resistant coatings as a byproduct from the sunflower oil industry, and as a source of pigment for natural dyeing. I'll include an image in the show notes that includes some of the colours that can be produced from various parts of the plant. And one more project that definitely piqued my interest is an ink product that can be used in textile printing that replaces traditional inks that are often derived from petrochemicals. This alternative ink is produced in the US using a byproduct from algae production. So algae, such as spirulina, is already being used to make natural food colorants, and the byproduct can be used to make pigment that can colour ink, plastics, cosmetics and textile products. Not only could this algae ink reduce reliance on petrochemicals used in traditional inks, and it does not require any special printers, but the algae actually absorbs CO2 and locks it in, and it releases oxygen. In fact, when it's produced on a large scale, it is actually carbon negative. Plus, it doesn't require farmland, so won't displace food production. So cool. As I mentioned, there was a seminar series with each talk including a panel of people from industry and NGOs contributing their knowledge and opinions on various topics. When we got there, I saw on the programme that one of the talks on the day that we were there was being moderated by Claire Press. Claire Press makes the amazing Wardrobe Crisis podcast that I've mentioned here on this podcast before. She is an amazing writer, educator and interviewer who lives in Australia, and I'm such a fan of her work. I went a bit fangirly when I saw her in the food court area before the talk, but I totally bottled out going up to say hi because I just didn't want to bother her. Anyway, if you haven't already, please check out the Wardrobe Crisis podcast. I'll put some links in the show notes to a couple of episodes that have had the most impact on me personally. The talk that she was moderating was called Fostering Reciprocal Human and Biodiversity Relationships, which was mainly focusing on the restoration and preservation of the Amazonian region. I'm not going to go into it too much, but I did feel somewhat heartened to learn that there are a number of initiatives and projects going on that are designed to protect and support the biosphere and over 500 of the indigenous communities living in the Amazon. Aside from that, for me, one of the main takeaways from the talk was a point made by Alexandre Capelli from the LVHM group, which owns loads of luxury brands. So he basically said that when faced with making changes towards increased sustainability, he felt that large and small brands were best positioned to act, and it's the medium ones that would struggle. The larger ones can do so because they have the leverage of capital and the quantity. And the small ones can act because they have the agility due to effectively having fewer cogs in their machines. I'm going to sit with that point for a little bit, but initially it just reminds me of the importance of fighting climate change and ecocide at every level. And although that I have, I think, a fairly justified knee-jerk reaction against large corporations and companies with shareholders to please, I think the truth is that so much of the funding that has made these textile developments possible has come from big business, which makes me feel really uncomfortable, I guess because it just hammers home further still how capital is so fundamental to all of this. Capelli also emphasised the importance of education in finding solutions to fashion's problems, and he drew attention to a new MA programme that is being offered by Central St Martin's called Regenerative Fashion. When so much damage has and continues to be reaped on the planet and its inhabitants by the business of clothing, it's hard to see regenerative fashion as anything other than oxymoron, but it's something I definitely think I should look further into at some point. I also want to note that at this event, there were a lot of displays created to unpack and explain a lot of the complicated terminology and concepts that kind of underpin the whole event. They'd produced a potentially useful framework to judge the positive or less bad impact of certain products, and they'd developed a series of criteria including biodiversity, water, energy and waste. And I appreciated that they'd created a guide for sourcing principles for buyers to consider. This was called Sourcing Principles for Planet and People, and it urged attendees to consider purpose, provenance, processing, positive impacts and post-use. There was also a large display unpacking the many certifications, standards and initiatives that can be applied to textile products, including GOTS, Oikotex, Soil Association and so on. How much attention the visitors gave to all these displays, or how much they already understand, I obviously cannot say, but I found them really interesting. So what conclusions did I really draw from the Future Fabrics Expo? On the one hand, it was fantastic to see the many and myriad ways that scientists and fabric technologists are using creative ideas and solutions to attempt to combat a lot of fashion's problems. But also it seems so similar to how I understand a regular fashion trade show looks and functions. There was zero mention that I saw of the degrowth of the fashion industry, and just a few lines on a display mentioning the second-hand economy of existing garments, as well as enjoying, reinventing and mending what you already own. Which I guess is unsurprising because that is not what this event was about. The side purpose was education, but the fundamental purpose of the endeavour was sales. So based on what I saw, here's my predictions for fabrics related to home sewing. I do believe in the not very distant future we'll start to see a wider range of fabrics available for home sewing that encompass more aspects of sustainability than we're seeing right now. I think we'll see interesting fibre sources more readily available and used in a wider range of fabrics. They'll include banana, pineapple, citrus and milk fibres and possibly other agricultural byproducts, but most likely used in blends with more traditional fibres like cotton. I predict that soon there will be better alternative leather options available than the current plastic vegan leathers. I also think we'll see fabrics for sale that have been dyed using natural dye sources, with fewer chemical processes and less water usage. The continued development of mechanical and perhaps chemical fabric recycling methods will result in a wider range of 100% recycled fibre fabrics and fabrics comprised of a blend that includes recycled fibres. So all of this has been making me think about what my hopes are for fabric production also. So currently, over 50% of fibre production is oil-based, i.e. synthetics. That relies on the extraction of finite resources that, once made into fibres and fabrics, at the end of their life are not easily reabsorbed into nature, and they do so much damage through releasing microfibres and such along the way also. Which is not to say that I think that there is no place or need for synthetic fibres in fabrics for garment use. But I'd like to see a large reduction in the production of new synthetic fibres. And I'd like to see a move towards the majority of synthetic fibres in fabric production being from recycled sources to keep existing resources in use for long as possible. I also have hopes for developments in production of natural fibres. I feel that fibre production and food production are so connected, and that seems so often to be ignored. Both agriculture and livestock farming are interlinked with fibre production. Therefore, the food and fibre industries should work hand in hand on better practices and more sustainable solutions for issues such as water usage and the use of pesticides and fungicides, and the impact that all this has on biodiversity and human life. And perhaps we can look more to agricultural waste as a source of raw materials, rather than resorting to deforestation for rayon and viscose production, for example. I also hope that developments in natural dyes will increase the range of colours and the colour fastness that consumers have come to expect from synthetic dyes. Plus, I hope that consumers will meet them in the middle and grow to love the more complex and subtle colour palettes that natural dyeing offers. So I hope you found this report and my conclusions interesting. I'd love to hear your thoughts and perspectives on topics related to the future of fabrics. You can find me on Instagram @checkyourthread, and you can email me zoe@checkyourthread.com. Thanks so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed this episode and are left feeling inspired. For more info about the podcast, including show notes for this and every episode, head to checkyourthread.com. I'd love to hear from you, so if you have any comments, questions or ideas for future episodes, please get in touch by emailing zoe@checkyourthread.com or find me on Instagram @checkyourthread. Massive thanks to Patrick Potter for production support, to Sylvia Seller for the awesome logo design, and to Simon at Palm Skin Productions for the music. This ad-free podcast would not be possible without listener support, so if you feel you are able, please consider signing up to the Check Your Thread Patreon. For the equivalent of buying me a coffee each month, you'll be making it possible to continue producing regular episodes. Links can be found in the show notes and on the website checkyourthread.com. I hope you'll listen again next week. Until then, take care. Bye!